What up, meatheads? It's Travis, American Butcher, and this is the Meat Block Podcast, the weekly podcast by butchers for everyone. This week is very exciting, super exciting. I am going to talk to you, the listener, about my thoughts on apprenticeship programs, and also I'm going to interview one of my closest, dearest friends, Bryan Mayer. Bryan Mayer, everybody, will be on the show.
Poor cutting results in an inferior piece of meat, regardless of quality. Good cutting enhances the quality of good meat.
One of the questions I get asked very, very frequently in this industry, or I guess not in this industry, by people who want to be in this industry, is how do I get in this industry? You've heard it. If you're continuously listen to the show and you listen week to week, and then you know that somehow I stumbled ass backwards into having social media presence, and people follow me, or new people follow me, and people who love, I would say, just meatheads, people who love the idea of whole carcass and love meat and love butchery and all that, ask me when I post something that they find impressive, always ask me, how do I become a butcher? And I want to do what you do. And just know that when I post something, I am highlighting a fraction of what I do. I'm not posting the time I sit in the lab, the time I'm injecting hams, the time I'm running equipment, unloading carcasses, trading chemicals, pre-shipping, or doing all these other things that I need to do, that also come with being a butcher. Cleaning, the company I work for, I am the production manager, but I will also clean the bathroom if needed. And Instagram is that platform, no matter what you do. Say you're a couple and you have an Instagram page, you're always going to post eating the most amazing meal and the most beautiful sunset, and you leading around your boyfriend by the hand as he takes a picture of the hand or something like that, that you're highlighting this characteristic, this dramatization, what your life actually is. And I do the same thing. Not every day am I doing that awesome shit that you see me do. Certainly, I love those days, and a lot of my days is repetition. We have orders, we have carcasses, we need 100 of this to go out, 100 of these to go out. We got this many pounds of that to go out. So if you see these images of me breaking something or being silly, because that's my big thing now, is just being silly and not taking myself too seriously and just having fun. A lot of it is because I've accomplished goals that I wanted to accomplish, so I could just have fun now. But just know that the road to get to where I am, when I tell you honestly what I think, it's my opinion, but it worked for me. David did the reverse, or not really the reverse, but he had more of a culinary background, working the lines, then, did some slaughter, some breaking, and like kind of did it in that way. A lot of people that I meet that want to be butchers or cutters or whatever. I was doing the Cochon 555 in Los Angeles, California. And we had a bunch of free labor from the Cordon Bleu culinary school, and all these kids and students with wide eyes. I was doing a butcher demo, or I was assisting in a butcher demo. And they were talking to me. And it was great because they were like little minions that I could be like, get rid of this, clean these, da 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 da. And, they were just like, yes. But one of them asked me, he's like, how do I want to be a butcher. I want to do what you do. What were the steps that you took, to get where you are? And I started telling him, I started it back at the recession in 2008. And, I didn't tell him about substance abuse and my struggles with depression and anxiety and being manic and all that fun stuff. But I was being honest, about to have this real conversation about the steps needed. Then the person I was doing the demo with interrupted me and just said, oh, we actually have an apprenticeship, a 2-month apprenticeship program at our shop. It costs $5,000, and by the end of it, you'll be a butcher. This person being my boss and me being where I was at the time, I just decided to just bite my tongue until my teeth clenched and touched and blood ran down my chin. And didn't say anything. Actually, my first thought that I thought was when they said, I want to be a butcher, I want to do this, I want to be like, why the fuck are you in culinary school? But I didn't. And I'll tell you the steps that I took to I guess to be where I am now. So after, kind of not working for a while in 2008, I suffered a self-inflicted hand injury due to a manic episode. This was back in 2008 where they just gave you things to help with your pain back then, not like they do today, where they, it's the beginning of that problem. I ended up not working for a while. I had some savings. I made great money when I was a tile setter. Not equal to the price of living, but I was also living in one of the most expensive cities in California, in Santa Barbara. But my living situation was changing. My debt to income ratio was going to drastically change. I needed a job. I was a tile setter, Santa Barbara being kind of like a small town, kind of went through the bridges of the places I could work just with my shittiness of being like an adolescent person, I guess. Because I was, in my early 20s. And my brother was working at a meat processing facility in southern Vermont. And there was like this timeline of when I needed to, find a place to live and have a full-time job. And I was bouncing at a bar and bartending, and not all the money I was making was just turning into substances and going back into me. So it wasn't really a viable, it wasn't realistic to be sustainable life-wise and financially. So about twice a week, my brother would call me and convince me to do this. Like, oh, just come out here, blah, blah, blah. And one day I just said, fuck it, I will. 2 weeks later, because I gave 2 weeks at the bar I was working at, I flew to Vermont with one duffel bag on Halloween and leaving Santa Barbara and arriving in Vermont and essentially at the beginning of winter, there was already a foot of snow on the ground. And it was different. I talked about the first day on the job, shooting animals on my first day and all this stuff. My first job was literally like scraping faces and I actually was never a trimmer, luckily, but I would scrape faces and wheeze beef and skin out heads and do head presentation. Lambs, I would skin lambs and gut them, and learned all these within a week, a very quick period of time. It was very hands-on, and it was very, short-staffed to the point where we were working 4 hours a day, overtime every day. But it just gave you so much hands-on experience. If you needed someone to gut, everyone knew how to gut. It's a fairly new business at the time. Then after a while of being there, things kind of evened out. Management was switched over and changed. My brother assumed a new role, leaving other roles open, and it was, I guess, streamlined. Everyone still worked and fit in where they needed. But now there was a person who landed, a person who skinned, and a person who eviscerated and split, and a trimmer and a weigher and all that stuff. And that was one side of the plant, was the slaughterhouse. And then the other side was a cotton wrap facility. And so after working on the kill floor for, I think it was about 1.5 years, I started being called over to the cut room, and my job was to bone out plate sections to make trim. And that's kind of just the general test they give you to make sure you know how to use a knife. And then we were backed up where we were killing more animals in a USDA inspected time than you could cut during USDA inspected time, which usually means cutting on the weekends without inspection. And, people cook the books and, pencil whip everything. So it makes sense. It's over 2 years ago. So whatever. And the place is closed down. And that's where I started learning how to break. It paid cash because the boss didn't want a paper trail of these actions. And it would be me and this guy, Alex, who's from Brazil, super nice guy, barely spoke English, but he was left-handed and worked across from me. So it was like working next to a mirror or across from a mirror where I could just do everything he was doing. And it just helped me get my reputation. And he taught me how to break, he taught me how to find little notches like that, and the pin bone and popping things, and how to break for different cut sheets, like how you break for a animal you're going to just bone out, or how do you break on a high rail versus like a quartered rail, or how do you do this? And it was just a really knowledgeable person. And I was still working the kill floor during the weeks at this time. And then one day I just showed up to work and I had white coats versus my blue coveralls. And I was just told I was going to be a butcher from there on out. But I wasn't a butcher. It just meant I was working in that part of the plant. I had to go back a step in my hard hat because I didn't know anything in that side of the plant. And then, but the good thing about working in a cotton wrap facility for a small farm, or for a small slaughterhouse that caters to farms, is that you could cut 20 beef a day with 40 different cut sheets. And that was my apprenticeship program. Essentially, I would work on things like chucks. There was a breaker in the cooler. They'd break everything, throw a chuck on a hook, or throw all a half would fit on a 10 tree. Then that would be pushed out. Someone grabbed the loin, someone grabbed the rib, someone grabbed the chuck, someone grabbed the flap, the rounds, and etc. And for, a couple weeks, I would only do chucks. And it would be, they'd come in as 5-bone chucks, and I would read the cut sheet that came in on the hook, and it'd say like chuck roll, chuck roast, bone in, boneless, flat irons, 7-bone, stew meat, strips, or Vegas strip steak or whatever, and you would cut it like that. It'd say like a chuck cut sheet could say like 4 to 5 pound boneless chuck rolls, stew meat. And then once you got comfortable doing that, the person who was in charge of running that floor would move you on to something else. You get the round section. And the round section was, you have your steamship, you pull the knuckle off, and you have the 3-piece round with your bottom round, your eye round, and your top round still on it. You seam those out, and I'll say like, all right, top round, roast, London broil, stew meat, or a combination of both. Bottom round, Swiss steaks, stew meat, stir fry, or a combination of both. Minute steaks from the eye round. And then you just get good at doing that. And that's how I learned how to break and cut whole carcass. And it was the same for pigs, and it was the same for sheep, where you just got really good at doing these certain tasks. And I started just documenting what I was doing at the time, and Instagram was a platform that just came out. My original username was T-Stock for Travis, and then my last name Stockstill. And I was like, well, that's dumb. Or like, I'm not in high school anymore. That used to be like my instant messenger handle, so I changed it to American Butcher, and I would be lying if I didn't think that part of whatever success I have isn't because of getting that name, because it was available. And I started posting just things I did on a daily basis, trays, things like that. And a shop in California started commenting on my stuff. And it turns out I went to high school with one of the owners. And we found about that later. They invited me to come out and manage and cut, and I did. And it was a very trying, humbling experience where I really should have, I could have done everything cut-wise. Where I fell short was the managing of people. I was great at managing people back in Vermont, but it's also a different style. It's just a bunch of dudes where you could be like, hey, what the fuck? Why aren't you doing this? Or like have this, that, not that I did that in LA, but it's just more like I couldn't relate to people, and I couldn't get people to really give a shit about their job, which meant I eventually didn't give a shit about my job. I learned all the ins and outs and why they're overturned and all this stuff and whatnot. And that is the place that told me to recommend their apprenticeship program. And then I met my wife working there. She was working at the counter. We hit it off and started dating. And she was the one who really pushed me to be more and pushed me to be in a different level as far as income and my skills, and like really started looking at like, oh, you have your HACCP certification and you have your humane handling certification. I'm like, yeah, so, and like, all right, well, so, this and this, and like, oh, okay, and building up my resume and really making it, not padding it, but just exposing things that I haven't utilized before. Because I was content with being working class by, my whole life, back when I was setting tile, and before that I was a rough framer and just working weird construction jobs. And my first job at Foster Freeze, I didn't have these dreams. I had this idea in my head of what I would make and what my life would be like. And she really opened my eyes to, like, it could be different. And yeah, so I ended up leaving that place in LA, working San Diego, and then with her help, opening up a shop for a football player up in Washington, where we moved. And then her encouraged me to taking my current position now. So I guess if you really want to do the steps I did, is, I don't know, find a partner who is willing to do the heavy lifting for you. The best advice I could give is really just like, go and get a job at a slaughter facility. Be willing to move. Say yes more than no. Don't even say yes. Just literally just do whatever they say. Work up. There's overturn. You're going to move up. And always have feelers out. What companies in the area are doing, what other places are doing. And if you always feel weird about changing companies or having a resume that looks weird, the reason for leaving a place that I always put is upward mobility. I left Slaughterhouse to manage to work at this place in Los Angeles. Then I helped open this place in San Diego. Then help build this mobile slaughter processing facility in Washington. And now I'm doing added value product as a production manager. So just know that. And then I started this podcast. Through this podcast, I made some amazing connections. And I had the opportunity to try out for the American team. And now I'm on it. So, yeah, a lot of people, well, not a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people, probably like 4,000 people have asked me, how do I become, how could I get on the American team in the future? Well, to start that process, become a member of the Butchers Guild. Like me and my good friend, Bryan Mayer, everybody. Check.
What up?
Nothing much. How are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Could you see me? I switched it to the voice one. Answer. There.
I'm accepting. Yeah, man.
How are you?
I'm good. I don't have any headphones. Does that matter?
No. No. I like that you shaved your beard. You look younger.
I did. Did you notice that?
Of course I noticed that. I notice a lot of things about you.
That's a stupid question to ask, right? Like,
yeah,
this massive hair on my face, and then there wasn't.
Do you notice how I'm wearing glasses?
I see you have glasses on.
All right, now hold on.
I think I've seen you with glasses a few times, not a whole lot.
Now, do you notice anything different about me?
Do I what?
Notice anything different about me? I took my glasses off.
Are you wearing a V-neck?
I always wear V-necks.
Dude, are you wearing a V-neck?
I always wear a V-neck. If I don't wear a V-neck, it feels like I'm being choked by a very weak person all the time. I can't not wear a V-neck.
No, I didn't. Was I supposed to notice something else?
No, I took my glasses off. That was the joke.
Oh, well, no. I did notice that. There's a delay here. You know, there's like some sort of FaceTimey kind of tech issue something.
So, Mahala.
And I'm in the middle of the Pacific, so, you know, maybe that too. Yeah.
The signal's got to go to outer space or something. I'm drinking a Moscow Mule slushy.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm. I brought myself some Lambrusco in a can. I'm excited for that.
That's pretty good.
Dinner. I've never had that before. So
you should come to Harrison's birthday party. It's very inconvenient for you to go.
It's super inconvenient, but apparently you've been stocking up on all the things that I love. So did you get a cotton candy machine yet?
No. So the theme, we'll probably get one just to have one. But the theme of the party is, since he loves trucks and tractors and heavy machinery, and like every time we pass a job site, he loves it. That
sure.
That when I work construction, that the thing I really stood out to me was like the mornings where you have your coffee at the AM PM or the 7-Eleven, and like, you know, all the construction workers eating hot dogs and, you know, nachos and slices of pizza. So we're turning our house into a convenience store for his party. So that's why we got the Slurpee machines, the pizza machine, the hot dog machine, the nacho machine, and all that stuff.
All right, is like Monster sponsoring the birthday party?
It should. And you want to know the weird thing about the party is that is that there's 4 children attending, including my son, and I think we have commitments from over 40 people.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the kids don't want that stuff. They've been brainwashed into, you know, eating healthy and all that sort of stuff, you know?
Not my son. He recognizes the Golden Arches from like 4 miles away. You
know, we grew up in the times, or I'm slightly to significantly older. So, you know, like we ate all that stuff. We had all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was like the heyday of it. Captain Crunch and Pop-Tarts and all that, you know?
Dude, remember Squeezes?
These kids today, they don't even know what a Pop-Tart is.
Yeah. All right.
Explode. Anyway.
So we're doing an episode, or Ryan and David did an episode about apprenticeship programs, all right? And you're going in this cold. I haven't told you what we're going to talk about today. And I recorded my piece that pretty much just says like I don't like the pay to play, you know, type style, but you are one of my best friends and one of my teammates and confidants, and you have ran what many people would say is a very respectable high-end apprenticeship program. And instead of David, Ryan, and myself just talking out of our asses, because like I've hired people who didn't know anything, I wanted to get your take on apprenticeships and things like that. So I'll just ask you questions, or you could just go free form from there. Sure. And you can mention places you worked if you choose to. I can understand if you don't want to.
No, I don't have anything. Yeah.
But like, so what the number one question I get asked from people is someone who's on the cusp, culinary wise, to maybe game processing, and they'll see these high intensity images of these selected things that I do or someone else do that I post online, and they have a romanticized idea of that's what they want to do, not realizing that isn't what I do, like probably even 5% of my time. So what do you recommend for someone who wants to, quote unquote, be a butcher, or, you know? from there, let's, I guess, talk about and then what models you would recommend for a small shop who wants to have an apprenticeship program, and what are things they should, some guidelines they should fall into, and things to make it so it's copacetic and fair for everyone. I don't know.
Yeah, because there could be a huge inequity there, right?
Yeah.
Depending on what the shop has to offer and what you're looking to do. And, I think there's good and bad examples out there. There's certainly cash grabs out there. And then there's folks that are genuinely interested, I think, in supporting and promoting and teaching, the next generation. So yeah. I was part of, helped co-create, whatever. I would think at the time, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, anybody out there, probably the only sort of soup to nuts butcher training program. And when I say that, I mean, from farm to slaughter, and slaughter came later, and certainly for those that wanted it, because a lot of people didn't want it. All the way to breaking carcasses, obviously, but then all the other stuff that you need, right? Like, so setting a case and creating value-added products and, helping people design their shops if they were planning on going and opening up a shop, what equipment to buy, those sort of things. So it really can be anything. I mean, if you want to learn how to just cut, I mean, now you can just go on the internet. There's lots of examples out there. There's lots of bad examples, but there's lots of good examples. But I think you just have to figure out first and foremost, how much time, what are you looking to get out of it? Yeah. Do you just want to enhance a skill set that you already have? You're a hunter, something like that. You're a chef and you want to maybe utilize a little bit more whole carcass in your kitchen or buy larger primals. Are you somebody that wants to open up a butcher shop? So I think kind of identifying what you want to do, and then this is the thing that I told everybody that came through our program at Fleischer's, was that you graduate from law school and become a Supreme Court justice, and you don't, although maybe the requirements now are slightly less than what they used to be.
No, you just have to be, anti-Roe v. Wade and hate women and all that.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. You don't graduate from med school and become chief of staff, so, I would say, like, you don't graduate from a quote unquote butcher school and go out there and open up a shop and all that, but maybe you do. I don't know. I certainly didn't have the confidence to do that. But it's a good starting off point. And then we used to, we would get people either starting out and then we would send them elsewhere or recommend other programs, for different things, charcuterie programs and whatever. Or we would get people that were going through this kind of tour of learning how to do it. So it was kind of interesting, but I would certainly sort of identify what you want to do, how much time you have to devote to it. There are, there's no program like what we had, I believe, currently in existence. I think there's folks that may think that they're doing it, but I don't think there's anything that exists like that. Now, I did just recently hear that our colleague Michael up at SUNY Copelskill, they are reintroducing. I think it's been about 2 years since they've had that program at SUNY Copelskill. So I think that's happening. Our teammate Cindy over at UC Davis, right? UC Davis has a program, I believe. But there's so few and far. Those programs are so few and far between. Certainly on that level. There's shops, and I think the shop is a really great way to learn, because not only are you going to learn how to cut and break and do whatever they do there, but you're going to learn how to interact with the public. And I think that's a really important part of this. Like, you've got to learn how to sell this. Not everybody is a natural salesperson.
Yeah. That was my learning curve, was, like I could do all the things, but when I was like in the middle of doing something and someone needed help, my initial reaction was to stab them because it took me away from what I was doing, that I just wasn't used to that. So that's huge, is to know how to now, like my wife always tells me, like, you oversell, you're overconfident. Like when I used to do farmers markets with her and stuff like that, she'd be like, tone it down a little bit. Like I would almost follow people out to their car and be like, no, you do want this. Trust me. Check it. Did I mention this free range? Do you want free range? All right. So let's talk about most birds. Let's talk about these birds. Let's,
Yeah, there's always the risk of, and I've worked with people before that were just like, they were great salespeople, and sometimes I think they would overdo it a little bit, but man, they always close the deal, like, Glengarry, Gunn Ross, always be closing. They were wonderful. They were great. But yeah, there's always that moment where you get that glazed over look from a customer and you're just like, all right, clearly I've said too much. But that can be really good. I think there's a lot to learn in terms of how to be a salesperson, and, give people just the right amount of information that they need. Not too much, not too little. Obviously like having a cooking background helps, right? Or just understanding how to cook things. That's super important. But I think that you've got to be, there's more choices out there now, in terms of like educational paths, but I think that's also makes it a little bit harder to some degree to figure out what you're going to do. When I was learning there, you just kind of found butchers and they taught you. Now you can go to shops, you can go online, you can take classes, you can enroll in programs at universities and colleges. So, I think there's a lot of good opportunity out there for folks.
Now, the what do you call them? Would you recommend people? I don't know how to say it. Like,
say it.
Well, shit's expensive. Stuff costs money, and like one of my big, I guess, things in life is like I never went to college. I got accepted to college. I didn't go, and the people I do know who went to college are still paying for it. That do you think it's worth paying for a program, or how does someone say, I have no idea about this industry and I watch Bear Grylls in these cooking shows or whatever, and I want to be a butcher and I want to know how to do this, which I always think is odd when people say that to me, because it's just, I don't know how people make that conclusion. Is it advantageous or worth it for me to seek out a program, I guess, or to just get a job in the industry? And how do I choose that program, if that's the route I decide, to know that it's reputable, to give someone my hard-earned money, to give someone up to a $5,000 to not get a nationally recognized certificate? Like, how do I know that this person has the skills? What are the things that the listeners to this show should be asking these people who have programs or apprenticeship programs? I mean, because I don't want anyone to be taken advantage of, and I want, if you're going to pay money, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, we're in a really good time where the information's out there. I think that you can connect with people via social media. You've got to be proactive. Send people messages. If you're interested in a program and can connect with people that went through that program, worked in that shop, or trained under that person, reach out to them. Ask them very pointed questions. You're going to separate with money at in some instances. So find out. And even for the places that don't, there's shops that exist. My good buddies in New York at Hudson and Charles, they pay. They have a paid apprenticeship program. It's a requirement.
That's awesome.
Because they know, I mean, obviously, first and foremost, it's in New York, and that is an expensive place to live, and they're working for you, and so they just felt that they could attract a different quality of apprentice if they offered something like that. I think that's the main thing, is just to really get in contact with folks that have done the training and get their personal opinion on it. Don't take what you see on Instagram or Facebook or any other social media platforms as, what am I trying to say? You can make anything look however you want through social media.
It's a skewed lens to show the best of the best.
Yeah, and people are trying to sell stuff, and that's totally fine, but I think, it's up to you to do your own due diligence and to vet individuals and programs and make sure it is the one for you. I won't, pricing is pricing, and, people price things according to what they need personally and business wise to live and survive and keep doing what they do. So, do I think there's things out there that cost too much money? Sure. But, maybe somebody else feels differently. So I can't really comment on the price thing. I don't think that's fair, but like the quality, that's the most important thing. So it's like, what would you pay to learn something that you totally don't know how to do and have no background in it whatsoever?
Yeah.
Now you might say then, well, what am I going to make when I come out? Am I ever going to make that money back? And, I don't know, right? Like, what do you plan to do? How hard do you plan to work? What avenues do you want to go in? You, me, some other colleagues of ours have had, a modicum of success in branching out. So we still cut meat, and we still slaughter, and we still raise livestock. We still do all these things, but we've found other avenues. So yeah, you got to be a little scrappy, and kind of carve a niche out for yourself, that goes beyond, just that thing that you learned how to do. But that's in anything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but are you going to make a ton of money coming out of it? No. Will you ever be rich doing this? Probably not. But, I don't know, man. Like, you can go to med school and have student loans that you'll probably pay off for the rest of your life, and exorbitant, insurance malpractice premiums and all that sort of thing. So, I mean, there's costs in life associated with all of that. So,
well, capitalism is, that's what it is.
Capitalism's not a bad.
Well, I've been thinking lately that like there should be a program set up for people who know the basic skills of cutting meat, that like the things to launch them into the next level of income should be like a yield workshop or a management workshop, or the things that like that you no matter how good you are at cutting's not going to teach you how to work with people,
Yeah.
And like you were saying with selling meat, cutting, no matter how good you are, it's not going to teach you how to, sell it to the consumer.
No, it's not going to teach you how to do the books. It's not going to, it's not going to, and I think that was one of the really interesting things about our program up at Fleischer's back in the day, was that you had access to all of that stuff. We made sure, we didn't, I'd like to think, I hope, fairly certain that, anybody that left that program, certainly fully capable of joining an organization, and benefiting and being an asset to that organization from a pure butcher standpoint, from a business standpoint, whether they felt the confidence to go out and open up their own place, that's their own thing. But I think we trained some pretty competent butchers and business people coming out of that thing. So yeah, there's all that stuff that's involved in it that just goes so far beyond, just the everyday thing. Well, it's that, there's a book called The E-Myth, the entrepreneur myth. And it's like, you're really good at something and you have a passion for it and you want to turn it into a career. I think in this book, the particular person was a baker, wanted to make cupcakes or something, and you wind up doing everything that's not related to the actual art or craft that you do. So you're an accountant and you're a lawyer and you're if you're big enough, you're a bit of HR and all these things, and you find out that you do very little baking or very little cutting or very little of the thing that it is that you love so much. So there's a balance, and it's you have to strike that balance and sort of be okay with understanding that it's not going to be all one way or the other. So, yeah.
So walk me through, let's say there's two hypotheticals simultaneously. You are my mentor. You're my master butcher, Bryan Mayer.
Thanks.
You are a member of the Butchers of America team wearing your swank ass hat. And I am just a lonely nobody. And I'm like, I want to be a butcher, Mr. Bryan. Here's my monies. What could I expect on my first day, and how long, and what are the steps in my program, roughly week by week, and how long will this program be that you would recommend? And this is just a skeleton outline. Don't peel back too much, because if people want to know this, they should contact, you through your platforms, and then you could pay them for this information, or they pay you for this information.
Sure. As soon as I can figure out how to monetize things in my life, I'll do that.
I would love to monetize just my thoughts.
Isn't that the key
Uh-huh.
to success and success? Monetizing our thoughts. But I'm more than happy to send people in the right direction. We ran a 3-month program.
Okay.
And that was a pretty quick in terms of like what you see out there, certainly the Europeans, it's a pretty short time, but it was a really intense program. Back in the day, the shop was only open 3 days a week. So that gave you 2 to 3 days of just cutting and breaking. And it was intense. And there were a lot of animals that we brought through that place. So, if we had, say, 4 students at any given time, there was some pretty intense cutting going on for about 3 days. And then 3 days would be case setup and, those sorts of things. But, the hours kind of varied. We didn't certainly want to overwork people, and we didn't want to create unsafe work conditions. But, they were 8+ hour days for sure. There were various methods, but I think the ones that worked were sort of the ones where I liked to start people off on pig, because you could break it down at least into its primal parts in a relatively short amount of time. It was very easy to see how you could joint between
30 seconds.
The sections. Yeah. And so I was always into creating these sort of pathways of confidence to especially for the folks that were coming in and had never picked up a knife or dragged a knife before at all. So how could I make them feel more confident as we went through the process, knowing that there was like some real mundane shit that they were going to have to do after it. So new students coming in, a lot of times we would give them just parts to work on, to get comfortable with the knife, getting comfortable with the different knife grips, obviously sharpening knives and going through that whole sort of thing. But parts like necks were always really great. You give them a lamb neck, give them shanks, and it's sort of, the sort of, Karate Kid style of teaching, paint the fence, sand the floor, wax the car kind of sort of thing, where you're having them do these repetitive things on these parts over and over again. And then when you hand them a whole carcass and you say long sweeping strokes or choke up and just the tip and all these sorts of things, it all sort of comes
First
together.
date stuff, yeah.
So, I usually start that way. And I think we've had, I think we had really good success at that. beef is always the thing. Everybody wants to cut beef, and I'm always curious why. It's fine, it's great, but I always felt that the thing that made you a butcher and the thing that graduated you to the next level was cutting lamb.
Mm-hmm.
And so lamb was always the last thing that I would give people to do. You give them pig and they sort of work their way around anatomy and they would start to understand how things fit together and all that sort of thing. And while they were working on pork, would throw subprimals of beef at them. So by the time they got to breaking beef, they would be pretty familiar with the parts separated from the carcass. And so it wouldn't be as abstract as, just throwing a chuck on the table. Like, there you go, So they saw the brisket and the chuck roll and the short ribs and all that stuff. They've seen all the bones and all that. And they had done the cleaning. And so it would go from pig and then we'd move into beef and do all the beef breaking. And then we'd move back into lamb, where you kind of put all those steps together, right? Like, there's a delicateness that you have to have when you approach lamb for sure. But you're also breaking a whole carcass and you're seeing the exact same things you saw on its, on larger ruminant like beef. So, yeah.
I remember when it clicked for me that I was like, holy shit, these are the same muscles, just in different sizes.
Yeah. So I used to do stuff like I would take a chicken leg, a lamb leg, a pork leg, and a beef leg, and I put them all on the table.
Uh-huh.
And then just have people break all of them down and really start to understand that it's really kind of all the same to a degree.
Yeah.
Just single muscle utilization versus multiple muscle utilization, depending on the size of the carcass and what you're doing with it, how you're cooking it. And so interspersed between all of the cutting would be cooking techniques and talking about how we're going to case it, always with an eye towards what is going to be the ultimate usage for that. Is this a kitchen? Are you a chef? Are you a butcher? And you're casing it. So, it just kind of built this whole layer. And then we would get into the value added stuff, obviously making sausages and deli cuts and terrines and pâtés and stocks and all that good stuff. So
that could be like a whole, like, to me personally, that could be like a whole other apprenticeship program where, like,
well, yeah. And so you've got Kate Hill in France who runs the kitchen at, I'm probably totally pronouncing this wrong, Camo, or however you would pronounce that.
Sorry. The American Camo.
Camot. I believe. And so, we would get people that were either on their way there after us or had just come back. And I believe that's Kate and then Dominique, who teaches. And I've had friends that take that and they think it's an incredible, incredible course. And from what I hear, it is. And I'm very jealous. I've never gotten a chance to take it. So, yeah. So we certainly wouldn't delve too deep into that stuff. Like, obviously fresh sausage making. There's like some quick dry curing things that you can do that don't take a lot of time. And I think that the expertise level is at a minimum on the things that we taught. So it was a little bit easier, but it was a great way to use product and make sure that you had a varied product set for your customer. So, yeah.
But it's all in recognizing your end goal. If your end goal is to cut meat or your end goal is to, be a salumist, then, a lot of salumists may not even touch a whole carcass. So they may not.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, like, you don't even really need to know a whole heck of a lot about butchery to be a salumist. Like you said, you could really just deal with like subs of subs and just get your product and you're at that point, you're the chef and you're creating these recipes. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I know there's folks out there that are doing whole animal charcuterie. There's George Turchetti. I'm probably mispronouncing his name. Sorry, George. And he's over in Indiana. And they do some pretty cool stuff off a whole carcass. There's the Ends Meats guys. They do some pretty cool stuff off a whole carcass. So, yeah. But, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
I don't think that I don't know, the fatted calf dudes, the folks, do they do whole carcass or they do a little bit of both? Maybe, I'm not sure.
I don't know. My work does charcuterie, but it's certainly not the best. Well, not that it's bad. It's what I meant to say. It's not what we focus on.
And you're fired.
I know. No, my boss doesn't listen to this. He also doesn't know anything about social media, and he doesn't really understand what the Butchers of America team is and any of that.
Until one of his children just showed him tonight. No,
I know.
Yeah, you do a lot of that. Like that's your everyday almost, right?
Yeah, and to me, it's like I could do this shit in my sleep. But what I do every day, I could do in my sleep. But we do a very set cut sheet. If you were to throw a wrench in there and say do this instead, I'd be like, oh, I don't know. I'm not trying to be arrogant here.
Yeah.
But
I thought one of the coolest things about running a program, I mean, I had an awesome colleague in Shiloh who was incredible, super talented. But I had so many people coming from so many varied backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they would ask me things that I just didn't know. And so it was like I was going to school as well. So I'd go home that night, I'd research it, and come back in the next day, and we'd talk about it and we'd do it. And then I felt very fortunate also when I started my career, I was for the most part self-taught because there was nothing really out there. There was no YouTube video. There were no YouTube videos or anything like that. There were a few books. Tom Schneller from the CIA, he had a book, and there was this book, Cutting Up in the Kitchen, that I bought that was illustrated, not even photographs. Merle Ellis, I think, it was the author of that. But I totally lost my train of thought.
I don't know.
But yeah, what's up?
I don't know. I'm a terrible interviewer, so I
forget. Yeah, that's why you're 100+ shows into this and have a huge following.
Also mildly drunk. So.
I just I think the other thing was I was really fortunate to be in New York City, where there was there's so many cultures and so many people cooking so many.
Brian, where'd you go?
Grocers and things like that. So I was constantly getting educated on how to cook just almost anything, so I think benefited as well, I think. So that's and these are things that I put on myself. I certainly wouldn't put it on anybody else, but to be a good butcher, I think you got to spend time on a farm, I really do. For me, that's what I put on myself, and certainly in a kitchen. I think it really helps to know these things, from beginning to end. So,
yeah. Like I've said it many times in the episode that it was a career path I never thought I was. When I first started working at a slaughterhouse, I never thought I would be a butcher. It was more just the overturn of employees and me just being stubborn and not wanting to find another job is what made me be a butcher, I guess, in the slaughter industry. And I love it now, but if I would have approached it completely different and had a different mindset, I would have paid attention more instead of fucking off in my earlier time. But I don't know. Somehow I became a butcher.
Yeah.
What would what?
No, I was just going to say, I've always been like, all right, I guess this is what's happening now. I guess this is what I'm doing now, and I came to this, looking for a new career, and I tend to get slightly obsessed with things. And so shifting my focus from music into food, and I just tried to ingest and learn everything I could, from people from wherever, which was really cool because at that time, maybe it is still like that. I hope it is, but I could just go to places and pop in and, work.
Yeah.
I was free labor, and people were more than happy to have that. I don't know if that spirit exists anymore. I don't know if people can afford to do that anymore,
Well, that's the big thing is
15, 20 years ago, the financial landscape has changed quite a bit out there. Yeah.
Well, hearing the prices of some of these apprenticeship programs and then knowing that they're in New York or San Francisco or LA, some of the most expensive cities in America.
Yeah.
It just seems like I heard stories of a place that like was their rent base was on how many apprenticeships they had in their program. Because it's like, oh, we had this many apprentices, then we don't have to worry about rent. We don't have to worry about, all this shit.
Which seems to be like a really sort of bad system to employ.
Well, it just seems like if that's what you care about, then open up a school. Don't open up a retail shop. Yeah.
I mean, the apprentice program, that we ran was certainly a nice. It was certainly factored in to the business model. The business was started obviously, to sell meat, raw meat out of a meat case. And when it became obvious that there was a desire, we pivoted, and it was part of this new business model. But it was never, this is the backbone of our business. The backbone of our business was always sell raw meat to people.
Sell quality cuts to people, and not to have a bottom line like, well, we need to find another apprentice or some shit like that.
And I'd be, as an apprentice, I'd be really wary about coming into a place like just feeling like a number to cover rent for the month.
You don't tilt your deck for them to see that. You hold that close to your, yourself.
Yeah.
So
that close to your chest for sure.
So that brings me to another thing, or my next loaded question, or my only loaded question is, let's say you have an apprentice that is terrible and that doesn't he doesn't listen to you. Let's say like you're trying to run a program. How do you motivate this terrible person with their terrible selfish ideas?
Oh man. Well, I fortunately have only experienced that situation once. I've only had two people that I would consider unteachable in my entire time teaching. And only one of them I would say was ill-suited for this career path. And I told him that. I think that you've got to be honest with people. And that's all you can do.
Yeah. Would you ever offer someone's money back saying like, I can't teach you?
Fortunately, I was not the person that was in control of that. So that was not my decision to be made. Would I? I would probably, now look at it much differently and devise a program.
Because hindsight's always better. That's why.
A good candidate for this type of career, The apprentice programs I like that of the places that my friends run is that like, if it doesn't work out, like it's they see it very quickly. And they have conversations about it, and the apprentices coming in know upfront what's expected of them, and so I think that works pretty well too. I think as long as everybody's upfront and honest, and there's transparency in that, then anybody that has hurt feelings is sort of lying to themselves and not being honest with themselves about maybe it not being the career for them.
Okay.
But things are different, obviously, when you fork over a sizable amount of money. And it's just not for you. But again, fortunately, we did not have a situation like that. We were very, very lucky, and that like almost everyone that came to us was fairly serious about doing it.
Mm-hmm. And then before I ask my last question, is there anything you want to say that we didn't cover about apprenticeships or any of things like that?
Just be wary, do your due diligence, reach out to folks. Just don't give people money. I know there's lots of names out there and there's lots of social media influence out there, but just make sure that you know what you're getting into. If you get out of it what you want, whatever, that's awesome. But I hate to hear stories of people going places and handing over money and just feeling like they didn't get what they should have gotten. Yeah. And we were always really, really concerned and aware of that. We never let anybody leave that felt like they needed more. We'd bring people back if we didn't have room for them right away. We'd let people stay longer, if they just felt like they just weren't ready. And I think as a teacher and as an organization that really cared about putting out butchers and continuing the craft, I think that's really important. You don't want to send people out there that are just not ready. Yeah. They're your potential ambassadors, So yeah, that's what I would say.
And then my last question is, are there any shops or programs you would recommend that are actively in America right now?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they all have apprentice programs, but I know the people that run them, and I think they're incredible people and incredible butchers. And, I would like to think that if you walked in there and had some, passion is a given, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you're not passionate, then don't even bother. Yeah. But yeah, so, geez, man, if you, on the West Coast, you've got the local butcher shop, and those folks are great in San Francisco. You got Rob Levitt, Butcher and Larder in Chicago, and Bryan in Austin at Salt and Thyme. Oh, you got my buddies Jay and Kevin at Hudson and Charles in Manhattan. You got Brent and Ben at the Meat Hook in Brooklyn. I mean, there's so many. Josh and Kate at Western Daughters in Denver. And then there's so many more, and I'm missing a ton, and I'm sorry for everybody that I'm missing.
They all listen and are hurt. So,
but then there's restaurants, and there's really great opportunities in certain restaurants that are doing a lot with whole animals, and it might not be beef, because most restaurants it's just doesn't make sense, but they're doing tons of birds, which is really awesome. Everybody, when you talk about butchery, everybody always seems to forget about fish. I got my start in fish, and so everybody to forget about that, and that's a whole other world.
Yeah.
So, I think it's just, just be proactive. Look, just, get out there, look at who's doing what, and get involved. And then on the farming tip, there's always need for people on farms. There's a ton of farms out there, and they run programs where they bring people. I've got a good friend back on the East Coast, in New Jersey, and they run a program out of their dairy. They've got grass-fed cattle. They raise really amazing cattle, make awesome cheese. There's people like that all over the country, and you can certainly find them. And I'm sure they'd love to have people out there that care and want to carry on the traditions. So, yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, I'm going to start recording.